Union. With me here in the studio is Cornelia Meyer from MRL Corporation. Cornelia, good to see you as always. This is a big moment, isn't it?
It's a huge moment because it was real. It was, if there ever was a cliffhanger, this was a cliffhanger, because we needed to progress on these three issues that you mentioned: the citizens' rights, the Irish border, and the divorce bill, in order to be allowed to go on to trade negotiations. And if we can't reach a reasonable trade negotiation plus a transition period so business can adjust, then there was a big risk that the UK economy would fall off a cliff. But let's be clear, we are not there yet, because the problems have only just started. We are now talking trade. And the Prime Minister said, well, it's good for business. Yes, it's good for business that we know the trade talks start, but some businesses need more specificity to know whether they can keep operations of people here or whether they move it. And they need it sooner rather than later.
And I suppose that's where all the attention will be on how smoothly those trade talks go, because that is one of the big factors that businesses presumably have big concerns about.
Well, yeah, if you look at how integrated the supply chain is, let's say, of the automotive sector, these parts go back and forth over the channel. So how will you keep on producing cars? You know, the access, which a lot of Nissan, Toyota, they have big factories here, which they didn't build them for us 60 million British people. They built it for the 500 million Europeans, because we have access to the market. The City of London, you know, we will be losing Euro clearing rights. But so what will happen? So if you talk to people like Deutsche Bank, or you talk to people like some of the big insurers or reinsurance companies, they say, we need to make some really hard calls in the first quarter of next year to see how many people we will want to relocate.
I think we can now speak to, thank you very much, Cornelia. We'll come back to you in a moment, but let's speak to our correspondent Kevin Connolly, who's in Brussels for us now. Kevin, this is the result of very extensive late-night talks, it seems.
Yes, it's been quite a dramatic morning here in Brussels and quite a dramatic overnight negotiating period in London. This all goes back, of course, to Monday, when Theresa May came here, and the talks with the European Union, which appeared to be on the point of a deal then, suddenly and rather dramatically collapsed. So a huge effort has gone in London and Belfast and Dublin over the last week into fixing those problems about the future of the Irish border, finding the right forms of words and finding the right language. That process went on until the small hours of this morning. We were woken up early to hear that Theresa May was literally already on her way to Brussels. So at that point, of course, we knew that a deal must have been done. We now have that confirmed. This is all about the UK passing that test of sufficient progress on the divorce issues of Brexit to get the talks process moved on to trade and transition. That was the big prize for Theresa May. There's huge relief in London, of course, that this has all been fixed to get it over the line. There's plenty of problems somewhere in the future, of course, but they've got it over the line for now. And there's also, I think, relief in Brussels. There's been a rather anxious atmosphere in Brussels this week. The EU has been broadly rather supportive of Theresa May, has said nothing to make the process more difficult. They'll be almost as relieved as the British Prime Minister that they have got that test of sufficient progress passed, and the Brexit process, as difficult as it might be in the future, is still moving forward.
And Kevin, one of the big sticking points earlier in the week which caused the talks to collapse was that of the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. I'm just seeing the Irish Foreign Minister has said that they consider this now to be a very good outcome, the fact that there will be no hard border, and that is a guarantee.
That's right. The UK government has guaranteed there'll be no hard border. At the moment, if you pass the border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, moving from Irish to British territory, you have no sense at all of crossing a border. It's like crossing the border between Belgium and Holland or Luxembourg and France. And that is the arrangement which the Irish government insists must stay in place, even when the UK leaves the European Union customs union, and there are different customs regimes on either side of that border. So finding a form of words that keeps the Irish government happy and also keeps unionists in Northern Ireland happy, which means the border will work in future, That has been the sticking point. We don't know, of course, exactly how that border is going to work in the future. This has been about finding the right forms of words, about the UK making the right declarations to keep the Irish government and the European Union happy. That's the point we've reached now, and we'll be going through the detail of what those forms of words are, what those promises are, not just on the Irish border, but on all sorts of other issues as well as the morning goes on, because those talking points, that negotiating document is now being published.
OK, Kevin, thanks very much. Kevin Connolly there for us in Brussels. Well, let's have a listen to how the President of the European Commission, that's Jean-Claude Juncker, broke the news that a deal had been struck.
I believe we have now made the breakthrough we needed. Today's result is, of course, a compromise. It is the result of a long and intense discussion between the Commission negotiators and those of the UK. As in any negotiation, both sides had to listen to each other, adjust their position, and show a willingness to compromise. This was a difficult negotiation for the European Union as well as for the United Kingdom. On Wednesday, last Wednesday, the College of Commissioners gave me a mandate to conclude the negotiation of the joint report, and it had to be concluded today, not next week. Today, because next week we'll have the European Council, and in order to allow our partners to prepare in the best way possible the meeting of the European Council, we had to make the deal today. On the basis of the mandate which was given to me by the European Council, the Commission has just formally decided to recommend to the European Council that sufficient progress has now been made.
That key phrase there from Jean-Claude Juncker, sufficient progress has been made, he said, and that will enable the talks to progress to the next phase. With me is Cornelia Meyer from MRL Corporation. Cornelia, he spoke also about the rights of EU citizens in the UK, securing those rights, giving them the certainty that they will be able to go on living as they did before, with all the rights and access to services that they've enjoyed before. That is also important to businesses, isn't it, who rely on EU citizens living in the UK?
It's incredibly important. Have you recently been to a hotel in London? There's nobody British working there. Everybody is from everywhere, and mainly the EU. So it's incredibly important. Have you been to if you go to a trading floor in a bank, they look more like the United Nations than the trading floor of a bank. So it's really important, and it will be important going forward that people can get access to talent. Let's not forget, you know, we have some really high-tech headquarters for Europe here, and they need access to talent.
OK, Cornelia, bear with us. I just want to share with viewers the words of the British Prime Minister, Theresa May. Here's how she outlined the details of the deal.